All right. So I will get started. We'll keep admitting people as they join us. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm really happy to have you all here, and I'm really excited for the presentation we have planned for today. My name is Ariadne. I'm the project coordinator for the Stewardship Centre for BC. And I would like to first acknowledge that I am an uninvited guest on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'd also like to extend my gratitude to the lands and waters that sustain us, including the rain that's currently nourishing our earth, very much so today, and the trees that filter the air that we breathe. I welcome you all to incorporate this gratitude into your land acknowledgements, not only to the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, but to the very land itself. I'm also very pleased to welcome our guest speakers. Dr. Julia Kilgour is an urban ecologist and postdoctoral researcher at the University of Guelph, where she has studied the multidimensional interactions of domestic cats on urban wildlife and communities, and how these interactions are influenced by the environment that they are found in. From a systems thinking approach, Dr. Kilgour is interested in identifying mitigation strategies that include and extend beyond regulations to conserve and protect wildlife from free-roaming cats. I'm also very pleased to welcome Laurie Mark, who has served as an animal control officer at the city of Prince George for over 2 years, where she promotes public safety and responsible pet ownership through education and bylaw enforcement. Before joining the city, Laurie spent several years with the BC SPCA and has built a career rooted in animal care and community service. During today's session, I will start with a brief overview of the purpose of this webinar as it relates to our Cats and Birds program, followed by our presentations from our guest speakers. We will also have time for Q&A at the end, so I do encourage folks to please stay muted throughout the presentations until we get to the Q&A period. You're also welcome to share your questions or comments in the chat, and they will be answered during the Q&A. And there will also be a couple poll questions that I encourage you to participate in. And finally, a recording of the webinar will be made available to you. Before I jump in, I just wanted to note that since the topic of free-roaming cats and related bylaws can sometimes be polarizing, I just want to emphasize that this webinar is offered for informational purposes and does not constitute any legal advice. The purpose of this webinar is to share current research information and resources to foster collective learning and for all participants who are interested in implementing or supporting cat bylaws in their communities. So for those who might be unfamiliar with the Stewardship Centre for BC, we are an environmental nonprofit whose mandate is to strengthen ecological stewardship by providing educational, technical, and capacity building resources and programs to various stakeholders, including organizations, governments, the private sector, and the general public. And our work falls under these 3 programs here. One being Green Shores, which promotes the sustainable use of shorelines through education, planning, and design, while protecting and restoring shoreline features and functions. We also have our Wildlife and Species at Risk program, which provides resources like the Green Bylaws Toolkit and educational programs like Cats and Birds and other guidelines to support habitat restoration and wildlife conservation. And our Strengthening Stewardship program supports the work of the stewardship community and other efforts to support healthy, accessible, and resilient ecosystems, including our Green Space for All initiative. Through our Cats and Birds project, the Stewardship Centre for BC and its partners work together to make BC a safer place for cats, birds, and other wildlife. And we do so by partnering with a diverse number of stakeholders, including conservation and animal welfare organizations, veterinary professionals, academics, governments, and the public to deliver collaborative outreach and education, resource development, and research. Now, before I jump to the next slide, I wonder if I can put up my first poll question here for you all. And I'll give you all a chance to respond. Can you all see that poll question on your screens? I think so. I'm getting some responses. Great. So the question is, to what extent do you perceive roaming, including owned, unowned, and feral cats, to be a concern in your community? Okay. I think that's close to everyone almost. Okay, I think so. So just over half of you, 54% consider it a major concern, if not so, just a minor concern. So that's great to know. Okay, click out of that. So through these collaborative efforts, we do promote a multi-pronged approach to addressing free roaming cats and their impacts on wildlife and communities. So we believe that public education is key to shifting the norms around responsible pet ownership, and informing cat owners about how they might be contributing to the cat overpopulation crisis and its connection to biodiversity loss. Public policy and bylaws are another important means to educate, inform, and enforce responsible pet ownership practices, both for the safety and well-being of the community, as well as to support other municipal biodiversity or environmental goals. We also recognize that supporting the capacity of animal shelters and humane societies, which are often overwhelmed by the volume of abandoned or surrendered cats and the challenges of managing feral cat colonies, is also critical to addressing this cat population crisis. With that, I will put up my second poll question for you. And the question is, are you familiar with any standalone bylaws or animal responsibility bylaws that include cat provisions in BC? If you have any in your municipality, of course, you can answer that as well. Okay, that's almost everyone. Okay, interesting. So many of you, if not most, do know or are familiar with cat bylaws, but some of you are not. So I hope that this webinar gives you a little bit more background and information on what these bylaws and provisions and other management strategies look like. So the purpose of today's webinar is to do that, to explore how cat bylaws and other strategies can help municipalities address issues related to roaming cats, as well as understand the broader context of cat ecology, behavior, and their interactions with people and wildlife. And the focus of a bylaw is to educate residents about the importance of animal welfare, community safety, and responsible pet ownership. And over time, these bylaws, along with public education and collaboration between different sectors, can help shift social norms, similar to what has happened with other animals and pets, exactly what has happened with pets like dogs. And complaint-based bylaws can also act as a preventative measure, and they do aid in conflict resolution, so reducing disputes between neighbors regarding nuisance behaviors or property damage, while also addressing broader community concerns like public health and biodiversity loss. Penalties such as fines or impound fees can also be worked into the bylaw as an additional measure of enforcement on a case-by-case basis. But given that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, it is important to understand your local context and to collaborate with community partners to develop practical and community-based approaches. I did want to give a brief overview of what these bylaws might look like. So the Stewardship Centre for BC, as well as partners like the BC SPCA, do recommend that municipalities adopt a responsible animal ownership bylaw, and that includes key provisions specific to cats. So the most common that we do see implemented across BC require that cats do not roam beyond their owner's property. They also mandate the sterilization of cats, typically over the age of 6 months, to prevent any unwanted litters, with the exception of owners who possess a valid breeder's license. Additionally, these bylaws require permanent identification, which help to return lost cats to their owners, and they limit the number of cats per households to specifically address any cat hoarding situations. Other useful provisions include standards of care, which ensure that cats have access to clean water, suitable food, and veterinary care and shelter. There are also prohibitions against cruelty, including abandonment, neglect, and abuse to protect the animal's welfare. Some municipalities have introduced licensing and impound fees that can subsidize bylaw enforcement costs or low-cost spay and neuter programs, as well as increase return to owner rates. Larger cities with in-house veterinary services at their local animal shelters might offer these services directly to residents, while smaller municipalities might partner with animal welfare organizations to run these subsidized clinics. Municipalities can also provide guidelines for animal welfare organizations and registered individuals who care for unowned or sometimes called community cats. This support might include provisions for trap, neuter, and rehome or return programs, the management of public feeding, and the relocation of colonies away from environmentally sensitive areas. With that, I will put up my last poll. There we go. Which cat provisions would you like to see in your municipal bylaws? And for those of you who already have some bylaws in place, you're welcome to include that. You're also welcome to indicate any bylaws that you would like to see added. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds there. Perfect, okay. And pull and share. All right, almost 50% agreeing that a no roaming bylaw could be put in place or might already be. And the mandatory spaying and neutering at 24% rate. Awesome. So just to demonstrate how different bylaw provisions can support a range of issues related to free roaming cats, including predation on wildlife, cat overpopulation, feral colonies, and concerns for animal welfare and community health. Most notably, a no-roam bylaw can influence a number of these things. So it could reduce predation on, or it would reduce predation on wildlife, unwanted litters if the cat's not sterilized, the potential transfer of zoonotic diseases to humans, nuisance cases between neighbors, and overall protecting the welfare of the cat and its exposure to different risks, like injuries and toxins.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Sarah. So my name's Laurie. I work for the city of Prince George. I'm a bylaw officer, but specializing in animal control. I've been doing the position for about 2.5 years now. We're kind of a unique little team here for bylaw and animal control in Prince George. There's 4 of us officers that specialize in animal control, and fun fact, we're all women. Back in the day, it used to be all men, and now it's all ladies that run the department. And at one point, we were also all redheads, which is a little fun fact. So our team here, when I first started with this position, we used to be kind of separate from the regular bylaw officers. I can still I have my bylaw courses, all my training. I could still do anything from parking tickets to on-site lease, but my main job is animal control. So there is, when I first started, we used to be a little bit separate. We used to work in teams of 2. We would work like 4 on, 3 off, 3 on, 4 off. And we used to be on call 24 hours a day. So we used to get calls. I was fortunate that I only had started just as we were kind of finishing that section. So I only ever had to do on call for a little bit. but my other officers who used to do the job for 14 years, there was a lot of 2 a.m. calls for usually our CMP assistants, any of those kind of things. So now we've kind of changed shifts. So now we are made up of very similar to our CMP and watches. Each of our watch has an animal control officer, 2 bylaw officers, which are considered downtown officers, as well as a traditional bylaw officer. So a little bit of that, our downtown officers deal with mainly our unhoused population down here in Prince George, and then our traditional deals with anything from unsightlies to sprinkling concerns to all of that kind of stuff, more in the other areas of Prince George. So we work 4 on 4 off. We no longer work 24 hours. So we work there's always officers on from 7 to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. We work stats as well, all those kind of things. So my main job with being animal control is enforcing the responsible animal ownership bylaw for Prince George. That bylaw was last amended in 2017. We are getting eventually close to being 10 years here, so I do apologize, and I will show light on it that our bylaw definitely needs improvement. There's a lot of things, especially regarding cats, that it needs improvement on. But my main job is enforcing that bylaw, and that bylaw relates to anything that has to do with domesticated animals. A lot of it, our main number 1 priority is public safety. Usually we don't deal with that too much when it comes to cats, but more so with dogs. But public safety, anything dog related, dog barking, dogs at large, cats at large. We have and I will get into it, a big feral cat roaming situation here in Prince George as well, but licensing, all of that kind of stuff. So anything that you kind of think of that is domesticated animal related, you would call us. And to go back to, I guess, like how to contact us, I mean, it's probably similar to all other municipalities. You can call us during the hours. You can submit a complaint online, and we actually do have an after hours call too, which is neat. I don't know if I can switch the slide, Sarah. Another one, please. And the next one, please. Awesome. So in 2017, the bylaw was amended to be a little bit more inclusive. We used to have it called dog at large, and now we've changed it to animal at large, which means any animal, any member of the animal kingdom other than a human being is classified under that. That being said, dogs and cats are most common, but I've ticketed for a horse being at large, coming onto people's properties all the time, those kind of things. So it's not often that we get other animals, but we can for sure. So this bylaw allows me to enforce anything in the bylaw regarding to domesticated animals. And as I said, the bylaw needs to be improved further, or at least our bylaw needs to be improved further to be more inclusive to cats and changing the needs of the public. If you're able to switch, please, Sarah. Thank you. So there's a couple sections that I'll go over that's in our bylaw. So one of the first ones would be licensing. Every owner of the cat shall ensure that a cat has identification on at all times, which means a collar with name, tag, number, address, tattoo, or microchip. We don't have in Prince George cat licensing. I know back in the it has been some topic of discussion. I'm not sure if other municipalities have used it. I know that city councilors have discussed doing licensing of cats, but as of right this minute, the only thing that they need to have is an ID on their animal, whether it's the tattoo, microchip, any of those kinds of things. And I would like to say, as somebody who worked in the SPCA for 5-6 years and then has gone to this job, there's been a good increase that I would say, upon speaking to our pound, I would say probably over 50% of the cats that we do now bring into them go back home and have owners. So people are definitely microchipping, tattooing. There's only one clinic here that tattoos now, so most of them have microchips, but we're finding a lot of people are more responsible with getting their pets fixed, which is lovely to see. And it's always great to have that animal be brought back home. Next slide, please. So the sections to the cat ownership in our bylaw is running at large. So this used to be, again, one of those things, dog at large. Now we've changed it to animal at large, which, again, can be any animal in the kingdom that is domesticated. So no owner or person should have the custody, care, or control of an animal, shall allow or suffer the animal to run at large in the city. And no person shall do anything or admit to anything where such act or omission has or may have the effect of causing or permitting the animal to run at large of the animal within the city. So what this means is any animal that you own is not allowed to be permitted to running at large off of your property. That whether that cat or dog needs to be on leash in a confined containment, that kind of thing, that is allowed. But the minute they step off of your property onto your neighbors, across the street, honestly, even 5 feet to the road, because that is actually city property as well, the animal is considered at large in our city. When I first started this job, cats, it was mainly dogs that were more of a concern running at large. And within the last year, we've seen an uptick in cats being an issue. Cats getting into people's gardens, spraying on their windows, scratching their cars, any of those kind of things. So that's where it comes to keeping, the management of keeping your cats inside, building catios, doing all those kind of lovely ideas that you can to try to keep your cat inside. It has been a little bit of a challenge for us, to be very honest, having those conversations with people, because I would say now more people are like, yeah, I know, I understand, my cat's got to be inside. It is causing these kind of problems. Whereas before, or even now, we still do run into the odd people who are like, well, it's a cat. What do you mean? Like, I've had cats my whole life, and I grew up with cats, and they've always been outside, and they're cats. They're allowed to be outside. Well, unfortunately, cats can do just as much damage, especially to properties, as dogs can. So, and people love, especially in Prince George, where we get 6 months of winter, people love their gardens in that short little garden time that they get. So, this is one of our big ones that we deal with cats, is having those conversations. If we can, the hardest problem is finding owners. It's great, people nowadays have cameras, so they're able to catch the cats and have that proof of them being on their property. So a lot of the times, how I always usually deal with my files, whether it's cats or dogs or whatever, is having a conversation with that owner and giving them suggestions and recommendations on how to keep their animal contained. And we go about having a conversation before. I'm very big having conversations and educating before ticket enforcement first. I find a lot of the times talking to people will usually solve the problem a lot of the times. So we have dealt with this quite a bit this past year with cats running at large. It's gotten a little bit better. We do have obviously our repeat people, which then that's where we would go into ticketing or trapping their cat, which I will also talk about in a little bit. If you're able to switch, Sarah, please, it'd be great. So our next section would be threatening or nuisance behaviors. Usually it applies to dogs, but as somebody who's dealt with a couple files of cats jumping on your very fancy car in the driveway and scratching it, or sometimes we've dealt with like the cats attacking another cat in its own yard, those kind of things. So this section of the bylaw pertains to that. Just a little blurb of any owner of the animal that allows the animal to bite, injure, display aggressive behavior, cause any injury, whether it's minor, serious, any damage to property, any damage to like open space, floral vegetation, swimming pools, wading pools, water parks. We only have one in town, and usually it's not a cat problem, it's a dog problem, but they can pertain to that. Any property and any waste, that kind of thing. Whether the animal is running at large or not. So that is a key thing. If say, it's not too often, but say the cat, usually we use this for dogs if someone comes into their property, but it would also can work for cats. If say somebody was coming onto your property, a mail carrier, and your cat is sitting on the step and decides to attack that mail carrier. Well, that mail carrier has a job to deliver mail safely to your property. It's your job to make sure that your animal is contained and confined to prevent those kind of issues happening. So you can still be liable for your animal hurting somebody on your own property. Yeah, the next one, please, Sarah. The next couple sections is kind of a little blurb. So we have ones about removing excrement, so making sure that the owner is cleaning up after their animal, including their own property, making sure that it's kept clean and tidy for the health of that animal, as well as if your cat goes to the bathroom in your neighbor's flower box, well, you're responsible for that. Same thing with the at-large aspect of it. Keeping up the animal's health, making sure they don't have any infectious zoonotic issues that you're allowing that animal to roam and give that to other pets or people, as well as making sure that it's up to date with the rabies vaccines. And if there's any issues with that cat, that you are mandated by the bylaw to give us vet records that they are up to date on their vaccinations. The most common one that we use for cats mainly is impoundment section. So anytime an animal is found at large, we impound that animal. Usually we always try the best course of action, which is trying to find the owner at the time if we can. But with microchips and having to look it up and that kind of thing, sometimes we can't find that animal's owner right away. So we bring it to our local pound, which is where they look all that stuff up, and we'll hold the animal. We have a couple of sections in place with our pound. It's 72 hours. Stray hold is what we call it, where in those 72 hours, the owner has to come forward to claim that animal. After that 72 hours, the animal is property of the pound, to which then they fix it, vaccinate it, microchip it, put it up for adoption if it is deemed in their criteria of adoptable animals. For a little backstory, the SPCA was our pound for the last 30 years. Like all cities, it was a contract. It was recently bid on by the Humane Society here in town this past year, and they awarded that. So we've had a change in who takes care of our pound, which has presented a little bit of challenges, but also good things. The staff and people there are absolutely lovely. The SPCA, they're such a broad organization. So a couple years ago, if we got in a bunch of cats, it's very easy for them to transfer them down to other facilities, whereas our facility here now struggles a little bit with that because they only have a couple of resources down in the Lower Mainland. And so they're trying to work on branching that out because we do have such a big cat population here in Prince George. So back to at large, they are the ones, if we catch a cat, we bring it to them. They, take care of food, water, contacting the owners if we haven't already as animal control. They're the ones that put in place, the city puts in place the impoundment fees, and they are the ones that enforce those. So I do believe our impoundment fees off the top of my head are about $50, but it goes back and forth between if that animal has identification or not. If the cat has identification, it's less than that. If they don't have identification, it's more. So it really encourages people to spay and neuter their pets, to also, prevent it from also one, getting pregnant, and also getting loose in the city. And also it's cheaper if they do get into the pound as well. So the other section, which is section 20, which is the right of refusal to release from impoundment. knock on wood, we've not used this too often with cats. It is more of a dog thing, but we have, as an animal control officer, or the shelter supervisor has the right to refuse any person to redeem their animal. On that kind of blurb, there's kind of reasons for it. Most of the time, as I said, is most of the time for dogs, but I can see it being an issue, especially upcoming in the next year with cats and repeat people letting their animals out. We use these kind of in like a little 5 section to protect the safety of the public from the animal, to protect the safety of the animal from the public, to protect the health and welfare concern of the animal from the individual, if the person is under 19 years of age, or any reason why we believe the individual does not have the ability to care for the animal, which works out lovely for us a lot of the times, especially with the repeat people that we deal with. It is a way to hold that animal, to which in order for that person to get their animal back, they have to provide a written documentation to our manager on the reasons why they believe that they should get their animal back, their steps in what they're going to do to make sure that this doesn't keep being an issue. And it really works well for us for those repeat people that let their animal roam often and they're not going to do anything about it, or if it's especially a safety concern, whether the animal is being aggressive or that way to people, or if people are being that way to the animal. We have unfortunately, with our bylaw, we don't have a lot that pertains to welfare of animals. One of my coworkers, she just moved down to the island. They have a lovely section about making sure you provide food, water, shelter for your animal. We're looking at that to add to our bylaw, because I know we do work with the SPCA cruelty department here, but as most departments, they're short-staffed, have a lot of things on their plate too, and if that's something we can kind of enforce, it would be more beneficial for us. So that's kind of where the Section 20 can come in, to protect the health and welfare of the animal from the individual if there is a little bit of animal neglect there. So yeah. Sarah, can you switch please?
And just a reminder, Laurie, just a couple minutes left until we need to switch to Julia.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just about done. The last thing that really pertains to our bylaw is cat trapping. So we do have a whole section regarding cat trapping, some brief things. You do have to follow the rules of making sure it's shaded from the sun, can't be colder than -10. You have to check it every hour. There's times for it, making sure that it's not baited, poisonous chemicals or substances. You have to let your neighbors know, nearby neighbors, that you are catching trapping cats. We used to do this quite often. We used to rent them from City Hall. We have actually stopped doing that this year, mainly because we do rent them only for certain circumstances, whether that is a litter of kittens, an injured cat, or if it's your own cat that you have lost and you've seen and got outside. We no longer rent them to the public, just because we were dealing with a lot of neighbor disputes and a lot of people who just do not want to talk to their neighbors about it, as well as the deal with feral cat colonies, which, just to touch on that, back in the day, they used to do a TNR program, trap, neuter, release. The SPCA used to fix all of the cats and release them, but due to funding and our bylaw, unfortunately, they no longer do that. So we struggle with the feral cat colonies quite a bit, because there is only so many barn cat homes, and what we're seeing, unfortunately, now is an increase because people don't spay near their pets, and then they're outside and then they multiply, and it's an issue of the animal is, most of the time, if it's actual true feral, is not rehabilitable, and unfortunately that animal, if there's no barn cat home or no one willing to, the shelter cannot keep it for much longer, in which we're running into our vets don't want to euthanize healthy animals either. So that's our big struggle here in Prince George is we're looking at hopefully trying to do a trap neuter release program in the future, which would be great, and also to change our bylaw regarding feral cats. And that is pretty much it. Can you skip a couple slides? I think there's one last thing. Keep going. One more. So this is just the last little bit. So for our amendments to the bylaw, we've already have been working on this. We don't have a limit of cats per household in Prince George. You can have as many cats as you like. We don't have that limit, only on dogs. We're looking at registering, licensing cats, reduced fees for spay neuters, additional fines if need more, fines for abandoning the animal, fees for surrendering the animal, and updating about feral cat colonies in our bylaw. So yeah, that is all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Laurie. Julia, welcome back. Glad you made it back in. We can have you share your screen again. You're welcome to start off wherever you feel comfortable.
And Julia,
Wonderful.
Julia, if you prefer, I can share the screen if you have low bandwidth issues. No?
This honestly never happens. Of course, it would happen right now, so I think I should be fine.
Okay.
But I will start further on in the presentation, and I think probably a lot of stuff has been covered, but just in case, yeah, if folks have questions about cat ecology and behavior, please reach out to me after this, and I'm happy to talk about it. I love talking about cats in cities. Perhaps I do have low bandwidth. Is it sharing?
It's still on the PowerPoint
Okay.
screen. If you want to keep it that way, you're welcome to. You could also, I know it's not ideal, but sometimes turning camera off helps to reduce that.
Is it not now
No, it's
working?
sharing. It's sharing.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with, or I'm gonna start off now with my approach to thinking about cat conflicts, which is through what's called a One Health lens. And that's thinking about how human health and wildlife health and the environment all interact. And the neat thing about cats, or the important thing about cats, is that cats interact with wildlife. They interact with people and they interact with the environment. And so thinking about how all these interactions are taking place, all these relationships are, how these relationships are occurring, we can perhaps find some sort of what I think of as like sustainable coexistence with cats. Because as much as we want to remove them entirely from the landscape, that's not going to happen for some time. So what I mean by cats interacting with wildlife is that the conflicts that cats are having, and conflicts I mean are predation, are disease transmission, and the welfare of the cat themselves. All of those are sort of predicated on the spatiotemporal overlap between cats and wildlife. We know that cats can lure predators into residential areas, which impacts them and other animals. We know that there is evidence that prey are learning to avoid areas where cats are in fact prevalent. And in terms of cats and people, how people perpetuate the conflicts with cats, well, we're supplying the cats. We know that these are new data from Canada. About 37% of cat owners nationwide allow pets outside. About 70% of outdoor cats are owned. There are about 1 million unowned cats outside in Canada, and most of those are colony cats, not feral. So they are cared for by people. And we also know, as all of you folks, I'm sure, are well aware, that the owner behavior is really guided by social norms and their values and perspectives. We hear things, and all of you have heard this too, and we heard this in the last presentation. My cat is happiest outside. Cats belong outside. My cat doesn't hunt. Other ways that people are perpetuating cat conflicts is through providing supplemental food. And that can be intentionally by feeding unowned cats. It also happens by feeding birds. And now I'm not in any way suggesting that people should stop feeding birds, but it is a behavior that people are engaging with that does amplify cat predation and cat-wildlife interactions. And then also some people are feeding the mesocarnivores, the coyotes, the raccoons, and that helps as well. And then there is also unintentional supplemental feeding through uncontained refuse or compost and littering. Now, cats in the environment, the landscape is the stage upon which these plays are acting out. So of course, the distribution and abundance of green spaces is really important in understanding cat-wildlife interactions. This is at a large and small scale in terms of public green spaces, but also is important at on private land with pollinator gardens and unmanicured lawns. And I'm not going to go into this, but of course, municipalities, as you folks all know, are involved in cat conflicts through bylaws, animal control, vet services, sanitation, public health. But now I'm going to get into the mitigation strategies. So before we can really engage in effective mitigation, what do we need to know? Well, we have to know about the outdoor cats. We have to know how many cats are there. Where are these cats located? Are they owned, unowned? What is their designation? We need to understand the wildlife. Who lives in the city? Are there species at risk? If so, where are they found? And we also need to understand people. Who are the people who are letting their pets outside? Why are they doing this? And are they willing to change? I'm just going to put a little plug in that soon in the next year, Nature Canada is putting out a cat counting guide for municipalities using trail cameras. Okay, so what are some of the ways that we can reduce conflicts with cats? And I'm thinking of ways that can be used in conjunction with municipal bylaws. So these are other things that we can do that will accentuate bylaws and also reduce the conflicts that we're having with cats, reduce the predation, reduce the risk of disease transmission, and improve the welfare of outdoor cats. Well, the primary one is by engaging with cat owners. And this is by working through behavior change methods to induce shifts in social norms. There is evidence of effective outreach campaigns that have been tailored to the values and perspectives and experiences of people. And I'm going to give you one example. So this was a study that was published in the UK. And what these people did was they created two different types of outreach materials. One is featured next to the letter A here, and it shows a veterinarian holding a cat, and it says, "Keep Fluffy safe from cars, bring your cat in at night." And then they also created a secondary campaign with a kid holding a cat, and it says, "I love it when Fluffy sleeps on my bed, bring your cat in at night." So these authors created both of these campaigns. They created posters and pamphlets with both of these materials, and they found both of them to be effective, but to different people. So owners who had previously had cats that had been hit by cars or had collisions with vehicles, they were really affected by the campaign A with the veterinarian. And owners with children were more affected by campaign B with I love it when Fluffy sleeps on my bed. So this is just to highlight that people are complicated, that owners are obviously not a monolith, and that we need to sort of tailor the outreach to our audience. Another piece about these campaigns or working toward behavior change is that the goal of the behavior shift has to be pretty small. It has to be within the realm of reason of what owners are willing to do. So here it was not just keep your cats inside all the time, but keep your cat in at night, because the researchers found that this was more likely to be accepted by the people. Additional things that can be done is by providing alternate like outdoor alternatives, providing catios, supporting owners in leash training, also providing increased enrichment when the cats are shifted to an indoor-only lifestyle. And promoting for owners who are not willing to change their behavior, of which there are many, having this alternative, this Birds Be Safe collar is this rainbow collar. You can see the cat jester-like collar on this cat. These have been found, these have been tested and found to reduce bird predation by cats. So they don't affect mammal predation, but birds can see the collars moving around. So so they're able to fly away and not be depredated. Now, also locating target areas is really important. So mitigation strategies, we know that cats sort of stay within a city block or a neighborhood scale. So areas that where biodiversity is very high and within the cat home range, those should be areas where outreach is targeted. I'm going to skip through these a little bit, but talk about the unowned cats. So of course, unowned cats we're worried about, and you've already heard about, and I'm sure already many of you are doing this, pulling cats from colonies into shelters for adoption, and then promoting adoption from shelters over purchase from pet stores or from breeders. There is a lot of interest in trap, neuter, return or trap, neuter, vaccinate, return programs, and there is evidence that these programs can be effective. So when cat populations are small and fairly isolated, so cats aren't moving in and out of this area, it can work. We can see a population decline, especially when it's done alongside the removal of kittens and socialized cats. So this can reduce population size, and there's also evidence that it improves the welfare of cats out that are then still living outside. Some folks found that that in colonies that had undergone an intensive TNR campaign, there was a reduction in the number of unowned cats that were brought in for euthanasia, indicating that the quality of life of those outdoor cats had improved after sterilization. But again, as you folks know, TNR or TNVR is controversial. It does not reduce the conflicts. So the bird predation or the wildlife predation and the disease transmission, those are not solved by TNVR. It's very expensive. It's very slow. And especially a really high proportion of the population needs to be sterilized in order for us to observe this population decline. You need about 80 or 90% of the individuals to be sterilized. And that's why it's really important to know how many cats are in the area. There are strategies that can be done at feeding stations for unowned cats to reduce the direct contact that cats are having with wildlife. Just quickly, the panel on the right-hand side, panel B in the middle shows daily feeding visits by cats, raccoons, skunks, and coyotes at a feeding station where the food had been elevated. So it wasn't just on the ground, it was elevated, and cats would still feed from there, but raccoons, skunks, and coyotes would not. So that reduced at least the direct contact piece. And then also, of course, minimizing food provisioning of non-cats is also really important. And the last thing that I will quickly mention is potentially using fencing around pollinator gardens or bird feeders to deter cats from entering an area. And this is something that has not yet been studied at like a scientific level. We don't have strong evidence for the support, but there is anecdotal evidence that fencing, while it doesn't stop cats from entering, it can deter them from engaging from entering these areas, and thus reducing the amount of predation that's happening in these areas. Okay, so I think that's all that I'm going to share here. I've got lots of references if folks are interested, and I know we've got over, so please reach out if you want to talk more if we don't get to your questions here. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Awesome presentation. And I really appreciate focusing on what is evidence-based and what has been successful. I think that information can be quite valuable for our audience. We have a couple minutes. I might maybe ask one question each of you, and if folks have time to stay, please do. If not, and you need to leave right at 1, that's okay. I do have a question for Laurie, and this is related to the CAT bylaws and the role of animal control officers. What infrastructure would the bylaw department need to have in place for the impoundment of cats? And is there any training for bylaw officers to identify signs of abuse when cats are impounded, and how that might influence the decision to release the cat or not?
So we, as animal control officers, we all got training through Langara Continuing Studies for the animal control course, which is about a 2-month course that goes into everything pertaining animals, including the health and welfare of the animal. So we got formal training for that. My background with the SPCA, I got formal training with that as well. And so as a few of our other animal control officers have that background of whether they manage the SPCA or work there. So they've kind of gotten that background. But most of us, through that Langara program, that's how we have that training. As for the first question, I believe that's kind of referring to the pound, to which the pound has, our pound building is very well set up for cats. We have a cat stray room and a cat ISO room. So if there is an animal that is displaying any sorts of medical concerns, we can isolate it from all the other stray animals in the cat room, to which then they will vaccinate, look it over, move it up front to the other adoption rooms. A lot of the times for us, unfortunately, here in Prince George, our vets only work till 10 p.m. at night. Anything after that has to go down south. So if we get anything from 5 p.m. on, we will bring it to the vet. If not, the pound will bring it to the vet. Yeah.
Great.
I think that answers
Thank you,
that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And Julia, one question for you. How much of the issue is, I guess, in what you see, responsible cat parents versus feral or abandoned cats when it comes to bird fatalities? And this might relate to the information you shared about just the number of cats, outdoor cats, who are owned versus unowned.
Yeah, that's a great question. So unowned cats are undoubtedly better hunters. They, I guess they just get more practice, perhaps. But because the majority of outdoor cats are owned cats, we're worried that so cats are the number one source of human-caused mortality on birds in North America. And new data is showing that there's about 19 to 197 million birds killed per year. So although if you compare an owned cat and an unowned cat will probably be more successful in its predation. The sheer number of owned cats just means that they're the ones that are doing the majority of the predation on these birds particularly. Does that answer the question?
I believe so. Yeah, thank you. Great. So we are just almost at 1 o'clock. Maybe I will leave it there for questions, but I will collect all the questions that were posted into the chat, and I'll send them over to our presenters and see if we can get them answered, and then share those responses with all of you along with the link to the recording. So I do hope that that's helpful, that we'll have your questions answered. I'll just finally share a couple more slides here, just to note that we do have lots of resources on our website, including some guidelines on different bylaws and the language to use in these policies. The BC SPCA also has a really great resource on this as well. And we do have a survey that we would love to have you guys fill out. Sarah, I think we'll post a link into the chat here shortly, but there's also a QR code there as well. It shouldn't take too long to complete. I think it should be around like 5 minutes. And then I'll also include the link with the recording and all the other information afterwards. So don't worry if you don't fill it out or miss the link today. And finally, thank you so much to our audience for joining us today and taking the hour to hear us and listen to our speakers. I hope that you come away with some key takeaways or even some questions that prompt you to explore this topic further. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to our speakers, Dr. Kilgour and Laurie, for joining us and sharing their perspectives and insights. And I welcome any of you to reach out to us at the Stewardship Centre, or if you have questions for our speakers, we can pass those along as well. Again, my contact info is there, and then our website and our social media links as well. So thank you all so much. Please look out for the follow-up email, including all of the links and some responses to the questions that we didn't have a chance to answer in the hour that we had.